So for these matches, they can usually end in 3 ways. Either one side will win, will lose, or it will be a draw. So for example, if Vietnam plays a football match and they win, you could say Vietnam won the football match. What's up everybody? Chào các bạn và chào mừng các bạn quay trở lại với podcast Slow and Clear của What's Up English. In today's podcast, you are going to learn a ton of words and phrases about sports. Not only that, but I'm going to tell you some interesting things like why do Americans call football soccer? And we will talk about the most popular sports in Vietnam. And then at the end of the podcast, we will have a quiz about general knowledge of sports. So you will do a quiz and there are 5 questions to see how much you know about sports. But before we get started, remember there is a free PDF with all of the highlighted words you see in the subtitles and a complete transcript of everything I say in this podcast so you can read along. And if you want to improve your vocabulary, pronunciation, and listening even more, then don't forget to check out my latest product, the 1000 Most Common English Words. This is a PDF with the 1000 most common English words that we use in day-to-day life. It has the IPA transcription for each word, so you know how to say it, as well as an example sentence in both English and Vietnamese, so you can see how the word is used. And for every single word and sentence, there is an audio file of me first saying the word with a pause so you can repeat it, and then I say the sentence with another pause so you can practice saying the sentence. So this will help you not only to learn the new word, but to practice your pronunciation and your listening skills. So if that sounds useful for you, then you can pick it up in the link below. It is only $79K. And for everybody who has already bought it, thank you so much. I also want to thank everybody else who has supported the channel, either by buying the product, liking my videos, watching my videos, subscribing. All of it helps the channel. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I will continue to give you super useful content to learn English. Okay, so now let's talk about sports. When I was young, I used to play sports. I was never that good. I had an older brother who also played sports, and he was better than me at every sport we played. But I did play a little bit of hockey and a little bit of soccer as well. And here is a picture of the highlight of my hockey career. This was when I won a trophy for being the MVP at the All-Star game for my league. Now, some of you might remember my video about what does VIP mean? Very important person. But this one is the MVP. So do you know what MVP means? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. So MVP means most valuable player. And this is an acronym or a term that we use usually for sports, the MVP. we don't say VIP, we say MVP. So that was probably the peak of my sports career. And then after that, it kind of just, I got lazy and I stopped playing sports. Sometimes I still do Muay Thai and boxing because I really like the combat sports, but I don't compete and I don't play in a team for any sport right now. So that was a little bit about my sports history. You probably noticed that I used the word soccer instead of football. Now, in countries like Canada, the USA, even Australia and New Zealand, I believe, people use the word soccer instead of football. And in this podcast, I will use the word soccer because that is what Canadians and Americans say. And I am Canadian, by the way, if you didn't know. Now, the interesting thing is that the word soccer actually originated in England. And you might be thinking, well, in England, they say football. I thought Americans created this word soccer to just be different. But no, soccer started in England because it used to be called association football. In England, they had many different types of football. A lot of the sports where you had a ball and you used your feet were called football. So even sports like rugby were a type of football. So to separate what's now known as soccer from the other footballs, they called it association football. That was the name of soccer. And then they shortened association football to ASSOC football. ASSOC football. ASSOC football sounded weird, so they just changed ASSOC football to soccer. So now they had both soccer and football. And in the late 19th century and 20th century, soccer or football made its way to the USA. And at that time, the USA already had American football, the one where they have the ball and they throw it and they tackle each other. So America, to avoid confusion, they just used that word soccer and it stuck. But most other countries still use the word football. I know that story was a little bit confusing, but in a nutshell, there were many different types of football in England. What is now known as soccer was called association football because that was the type of football it was. And then they shortened it to ASSOC football, which then turned into soccer. And when the sport came to the USA, they just used that word soccer to avoid confusion with American football. Okay, so there is the little history lesson. I hope it wasn't too confusing. So now let's play a little game. Let's see if you know the 5 most common sports in Vietnam. I did some research on this and tried to figure out the most common sports, and this is what I found. So what do you think the most common sport in Vietnam is? This one is pretty easy. If you guessed soccer, then you are correct. Now, since soccer is so popular in Vietnam, let's talk about it. Firstly, soccer is played on a field. This field could have real grass or fake grass, and that fake grass is called turf. And the professional soccer teams play at a stadium, but they still play on a field. So the field is in the stadium. Each team has 11 players, and they each have their own positions, including goalkeepers, midfielders, defenders, and forwards. And of course, each team has a coach. Now, in professional games, there are usually 4 referees, and the referees are there to make sure the players don't break the rules, and if they do, they decide how to penalize them. So soccer is the most common sport in the world, probably because you don't need much to play it. You just need a ball and an area to play in. You don't even need a net. You can just put 2 things there, and that is your net. I remember being young, and we would make a net just with like random things, like a can and then a plastic bag, and that is your net, right? And so for soccer and a lot of other team sports, we call the competition between 2 teams a match. So it's like a soccer match. But for some other sports, we can also call it a game. For example, for American football, hockey, basketball, and baseball, you will often hear Americans and Canadians call it a game. For example, we'll say, "Did you watch the hockey game last night?" Or "Did you watch the basketball game?" But for other sports like boxing, tennis, rugby, and for sports played in Europe, they will usually say match. For example, "Did you watch the football match?" Or "The rugby match yesterday was crazy." So for these matches, they can usually end in 3 ways. Either one side will win, will lose, or it will be a draw. So for example, if Vietnam plays a football match and they win, you could say Vietnam won the football match. But if you want to say that Vietnam defeated another team, we often use the word beat. So to beat and to defeat mean the same thing, but to beat is more natural and is more common. So for example, you could say Spain beat England in the Euro 2024 championship. Or if you want to say it the other way around, we use the verb lost to. For example, England lost to Spain in the Euro 2024 championship. Okay, so that was a lot about soccer. We spent a lot of time talking about soccer just because it is so popular. So now let's move to the number 2 most common sport in Vietnam. Do you know what it is? I'll give you 3 seconds. 2, 1. The second most common sport in Vietnam is badminton. Badminton is really popular because, again, you don't need much to play it. You need a racket, a shuttlecock, and if you want, you can use a net. And when you go around Vietnam, you see people playing badminton in so many places, like in parks or on the street. For example, all they need to do is attach a net to 2 trees, and then that's a spot where you can play badminton. So personally, I love badminton. I think it's a really fun game. It's not too difficult. Okay, so now let's move to the 3rd most popular sport in Vietnam, which is table tennis. All right, so table tennis can also be called ping pong, and it's popular all around Vietnam. Vietnam is also pretty good at it. There are a lot of Vietnamese players in international tournaments, so they are able to compete on the international stage. For table tennis, you simply need a table with a net and 2 paddles. Some people call them rackets, but I think it makes more sense to call it a paddle. And also, of course, you need a ping pong ball or a table tennis ball. All right, so let's move to number 4. The 4th most popular sport in Vietnam is volleyball. So there are 2 main types of volleyball. There is indoor volleyball and there is beach volleyball that you can play outside, because on the beach you can dive, you can fall, and you're not going to get hurt, unlike falling on concrete. And so actually Vietnam is very good at volleyball too. The men and the women's team regularly compete in the international tournaments. And I saw in a news article not too long ago that the women's team came 3rd in a pretty big championship. I can't remember the name of the championship, but they came 3rd, I think right behind Czech Republic, who came 1st, and Puerto Rico, who came 2nd. But the point is that Vietnam is also very good at volleyball. And so number 5, the 5th most popular sport is basketball. So basketball is a sport that's growing pretty fast in Vietnam, especially among the young population. I'm sure many of you, when you see the basketball courts, the public basketball courts in some areas, like in the Vin Homes apartments, you'll see the vast majority of the players are young kids. And so basketball has become very popular amongst the young crowd. And in Vietnam, there is a basketball association called the VBA, the Vietnam Basketball Association. This is a league that has 6 teams, including the Hanoi Buffaloes, the Saigon Heat, the Nha Trang Dolphins, and 3 other teams. And for basketball, again, you don't need too much. You need a flat and hard surface, like not grass, but concrete, a basketball net, and a basketball. There are a few other sports that are worth mentioning. Oops, that was my phone. Like billiards. So billiards is a broad term for sports played with the cue. Normally, a lot of native speakers will call it pool. So if it's the game with the table with the holes, then we call it pool. But there's also the game with no holes that they play in Vietnam, and that is called carom. It's quite popular. I've never played it. It looks pretty hard, but yeah. All right, guys. So now let's do the sports quiz. 5 questions. Question number 1. Which country won the FIFA World Cup in 2018? A, Brazil. B, Germany. C, France. Or D, Argentina. 5 seconds. The country that won is C, France. All right, let's go to question number 2. In which sport do players use a racket to hit a shuttlecock over a net? A, tennis. B, badminton. C, squash. Or D, table tennis. Now you can pause it if you need to think. The answer is B, badminton. Okay, question number 3. Which athlete is known for winning 8 gold medals in a single Olympic Games? A. Usain Bolt. B. Michael Phelps. C. Carl Lewis. Or D. Mark Spitz. Pause if you need to think. The answer is B. Michael Phelps. All right, we have 2 more questions. If you got some of them right, good job. If you got all of them right, fantastic. If you got none of them right, at least you're trying. So number 4, which sport is known as the fastest game on ice? A. Figure skating. B. Curling. C. Ice hockey. Or D. Speed skating. Sorry. Okay, the answer is ice hockey. That is the national sport of Canada. It is the sport we're good at. It is the fastest game on ice. Question number 5, last question. What is the maximum score a gymnast can achieve in a single routine? A. 10 points. B. 50 points. C. 100 points. Or D. 20 points. The answer is A. 10 points. All right, guys. So that was the sports quiz. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the entire podcast. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you feel like you're lacking a little bit of motivation to learn English these days, then check out this video where I give you 3 ways to increase your motivation. And don't forget to download the PDF with all of the words from this podcast. It's in the link below, as well as the 1,000 most common words PDF for $79K. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next podcast. Goodbye.